With Hashem's help, we're going to be delving into a few teachings from the Hasidic masters on Parshas Vayechi, and we'll begin with the Degel and Ephraim. The piece for the Noam Elimelech is pretty lengthy, so I'm not sure we'll get to the Vasemas, but let's start at the beginning with the shorter piece from the Degel. And he says like this: Hikavtzu v'shimu b'nei Yaakov v'shimu al Yisrael avichem. Yaakov Avinu in this week's parsha, right before his passing on his deathbed, gathers together his children, the Shvatim, and he blesses them. So this pasuk means Hikavtzu v'shimu b'nei Yaakov, gather and listen, children of Yaakov, v'shimu al Yisrael avichem, and listen to Yisrael your father. Yesh Lomar says the Degel and Ephraim al derech. The Gemara says Okiru l'neshaychu kadesha titasru. Very interesting teaching from Chazal, which means respect your wives, give them honor and kavod, in order so that you should become wealthy. How exactly that works, there are a few explanations. On a spiritual sense, a person who has shalom bayis creates the kli, creates the vessel, ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu motzi kli machzik bracha el shalom, right? The ultimate vessel for wealth, the ultimate vessel for everything good in a person's life is peace. And so by respecting your wife and by giving her the requisite honor and treating her properly, you're creating a vessel so that the blessing can flow down. That's one understanding. But the Degel is going to take us into a level beyond just the simple explanation to understand something relevant to each and every one of us. We're talking about a spiritual process. And he says, V'shamati b'zeh remez. He said, I've heard a remez, I've heard a deeper understanding of this. Neshaychu kishenoifu mamadrigasa. He says the word neshaychu on a simple level could be referring to a person's wife. But always in the female and masculine spectrum, neshaychu, this concept of a feminine, is a little bit always referencing a bit of a weaker, a bit more sensitive, a bit less overt, and the masculine energy is going outward and producing and with more strain. So neshaychu a little bit connotes a bit of weakening. So he says over here what that means is kishenofo mamadrigasa, when a person is falling a little bit, v'shocheach b'Hashem, and a person is forgetting HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and a person's forgetting what it means to daven, what it means to learn, what it means to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to live a life of meaning in that way. Oikiru oisaya madrega. Says the Gemara, when you have neshaychu, when you have a little bit of a weakening in your spiritual connection, oikiru oisai hamadrega. Respect it. Treasure it. And remind yourself that any sort of lull in a spiritual service doesn't just mean, a person has a bad day, a person can have bad weeks, a person can have bad months, a person can have bad years and decades. Rabbi Nachman says in Torah Mem Ches and Tinyana, there are people who can feel a lapse in their service and a lapse in their perception for a very, very long period of time. And that's part of the journey. And here the Degel and Ephraim is saying, when a person feels that they're falling and a person feels like they're cut off and like there's no hope and that there are boundaries that are preventing them from connecting to that being on their level, don't run away from that. Respect it in the moment. Give it respect. Why? Because you need to remind yourself that any sort of lull, any sort of down, is ultimately for the sake of tisasur, for an unbelievable spiritual wealth. Hainu yirida zu tzorech aliyah. That any sort of yirida that a person has, both emotionally, spiritually, physically, intellectually, any sort of lull is ultimately to create the vessel and the space for yearning. Rabbi Nassan says an amazing thing, that ultimately in creating the world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu went through the process of tzimtzum, of constriction. And Rabbi Nassan says that ultimately the whole purpose of this separation between a physical world and God and the Ein Sof was to create the vessel, the space, so that we can yearn for Him. If we were absolutely one with Him and always conscious of Him, and didn't have to choose good from bad and struggle to perceive His presence filtering through the rays of the rays of His presence filtering through this world, so then we wouldn't have the ability to yearn and the ability to choose and the ability to search. So Rabbi Nassan says the whole creation of the world is to create that barrier and that separation. So certainly a person in his own life, when a person experiences yurida, person experiences a lull, he needs to respect that and to treasure it and to realize that there's a ton of potential here for him to yearn, for him to re-clarify his conviction, what he wants out of life, and to remind himself, to give himself the strength to push even further back. The whole point is for a person to get to an even higher level. This is the deeper understanding of the names of Yosef's two children, Menashe and Ephraim. Menashe is the firstborn, Ephraim is the younger brother. Ultimately, famously in this week's parsha, Yaakov Avinu puts Ephraim before Menashe by putting his right hand on Ephraim's head, his left hand's on Menashe's head, and Yosef tries to correct him, and Yaakov says, I know that this one's younger and this one's older, but Ephraim is ultimately going to be a much greater nation than Menashe, and he's going to ultimately be the one that succeeds. So he says, Menashe hu lashon shikha. The word Menashe is coming from the word shikha, kinashani elokim. Lashon Menashe is to forget. He says the word Menashe, therefore, is hinting to this state when a person forgets the master of the world, forgets what's important in life, forgets what the purpose that this neshama came down to the world for 70, 80 years, very short period of time we have to accomplish in this world. It's not just, to get distracted and to be drawn off course. So a person forgets Menashe. That's the lower state. That's the neshaychu. That's the lull. That's the failure of the descent. Ephraim ulashin paravarava. The root of the word Ephraim is Piriya Varivya, which means to produce, to multiply, to succeed, to flourish. So Menashe is the downfall, and Ephraim is the rising again. Hainu b'chinas gadlus. When a person enters into an expanded consciousness, things are clear, he has direction in life, he's able to feel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with him, he's succeeding, he's rising. V'zeu shamar hakasav, and this is on a deeper level, is what Yaakov Avinu is saying, Achiv hakatan, that the younger brother, which is Ephraim, ultimately, Yigdal Mimenu will be bigger than Menashe. That's on a Pashup shot. Achiv HaKatan, Yigdal Mimenu will be greater than Menashe. But if you look at it in a grammatical sort of deeper element, we can see that Achiv HaKatan, which is a reference to Ephraim, will be Yigdal. You know why he'll be great? Mimenu. Not more than, but from Menashe. That it's the Menashe period of our life when a person falls into neshaychu, into a place of forgetfulness, of weakening, that Achiv HaKatan, that the Ephraim is Yigdal Mimenu. That ultimately when he's able to get over that hump, when he reaches rock bottom, gets up and says, I need to fix my life, ultimately it can open doors that otherwise would have remained closed forever. From the perspective and the level that a person is in, that place of spiritual descent, in a place of Menashe, ultimately it'll bring a person to an even higher level in a crazy way, right? It's a crazy thing to understand that, but it's true. And the Zohar Kodesh says that Bali Tshuva stand in what's called Heichal HaChamishi Sheba Gan Eden, the highest point of Gan Eden, where tzaddikim can never reach. Right? So in a certain way, they're able to reach a spiritual plateau where they can look back over their lives and say that I needed to go through that process. I needed to go through that forgetfulness, that place of descent, only for the purpose of bringing me to a much higher place, of balance, of having experienced, of having known what that world looks like, and to know that it's empty, that it's rotten at the core. There's nothing there. And somehow our tradition is able to provide us everything that this world is so desperately seeking and can't seem to discover. So this is what the pasuk means. That Yaakov Avinu gathers together the Shvatim, and he says, gather and listen, sons of Yaakov. Everybody knows that Yaakov Avinu had two names, Yaakov, and the name that was given to him by the Malach, Yisrael. Yisrael is a much greater name than Yaakov. Yaakov, right, the root of the word Yaakov is Eke, which means a heel, it's a lower level. Yisrael is Osios Li Rosh, right? Connected to the head, the highest part. Yaakov is the lower part, and Yisrael is the highest part. So says Yaakov Avinu to his children, first you gotta start with Yikavtzu v'shimu b'nei Yaakov. First a person has to go through that lull, to be in a lower place, the place of Akev, the place of a heel that's unfeeling, that's numb to spirituality. When a person is in a low level, a person needs to open his ears and to focus deeply and to understand that I'm in this situation for a reason. I got to make use of it. I can't listen to the Yitzhar that's trying to push me into a place of despair. Adarabah, any distance is for the purpose of yearning. Rabbi Nachman says all boundaries, kol hamanias eina ela b'shvil hacheshek, is only for the purpose of building up desire. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to put us through the situation, to taste what it means, this world, to taste what it means, separation of God, to live in a meaningless place, so that ultimately when it's time for us to have a spiritual awakening, it can be that much stronger because we're that much more desperate. That's for the purpose of Vishimu al Yisrael Avichem. First, when you experience Yaakov, which is the lower level, Menashe, which is the lower level, Neshaychu, the lower level, is for the purpose of finally attaining Vishimu al Yisrael Avichem, the level of Ephraim, the level of Kedisha Tisasru. Through lower levels and through lower realms of existence and experience, and this is something that every person needs to remember all the time. That's why I say all the time, Hasidus is not like a nice vart, you know? Everyone wants to say the Torah of vart. Hasidus somehow manages, and there are big scholars and thinkers who have written about this, in every story of Hasidus, in every Torah from Hasidus, they somehow encapsulated a truth that if a person were only to walk with that story or that particular lesson, they can apply it to their whole lives, and it can really become a foundation. It's not just a nice idea. These ideas are really core truths that if a person brings into his heart, it can give him a lot of strength in many, many different situations. This is a great example of that, and that's the first piece, the Degel Machane Ephraim. Let's delve into the Noam Elimelech. Again, it's a bit lengthy and very complex. Let's try to get through it with the time that we have with Al Hashem. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim, and Yaakov resided in the land of Egypt. And Nirali says the Heilig Noam Elimelech says here, it appears to me, Al Pi Isa the Gemara, this which is brought in the Gemara, Amru Allah al Reb Chanina Mendoza, that when Reb Chanina Mendoza would daven for those who were ill, he would be able to say, this one will live and this one will die. And they asked him, how do you know this? How are you able to say definitively this one's going to live and this one's going to die? Amr, he said, if the tefillah is shkura b'fi, which literally means it is fluent in my mouth, shkura b'fi, so then mikubelas, then I know that it's going to be accepted. I know that this particular patient will be healed. And if the tefillah is not shkura b'fi, then I know that there's something off. It's just the channels are closed. So l'chayr, it says the Noam Elimelech, mila shkura b'fi in a muvan. It's not really the grammatically correct way to write that the tefillah came out fluently. What's shkura b'fi? Why do you have to mention his mouth? Just refer to the tefillah itself. Ha'ilal should have said, Im tefillasi yotze mipi b'li gimgum. If the tefillah, because you're not talking about the mouth fluid, shkura b'fi, you're talking about the tefillah itself. So why don't you just say, Im tefillasi yotze mipi b'li gimgum, and that would refer to the tefillah itself. Yadushi mikabalas. That's the lashon and the way that Reb Chanina Mendoza should have expressed it. But he says, I would like to teach you something very, very deep, and this is truly deep. Dihina, he says, there's a fundamental problem with the concept of tefillah. We need to understand what this Indian is, that a tzaddik is able to daven for a sick person, and ultimately that sick person is able to be healed. Because there's a theological problem to know that in a certain sense, something that a human being could do will somehow change what was supposed to happen otherwise. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's no ashtanas. God doesn't change his mind. What God knows is an intrinsic knowledge, like the Rambam describes and the Tanya brings it down. God doesn't know something in the way that we know something, and that we take in information that was external to us and it becomes a part of us. All of existence is folded into Yudke Vavke. All of existence is Einod Mavado. Says that the Baal Tanya, when a person stubs his toe, he needs to intellectually understand that his toe banged into a table and sort of bring that information up into his brain. Know it. You feel it. You stubbed your toe. That's the way that everything that happens on every level of existence, God knows. It's within him. It's part of his being, kiviyachal, so to speak. So what does this mean that tzaddik davens and the patient is healed? What, was the patient going to be healed before that or not? How could it be that somehow God changed his mind based on an action that the tzaddik took? Indians, he explains something deep and very mysterious and really, really secret. Dihine, and he says the following. All the worlds, v'chol and Ephraim, and all creations, before the actual physical, practical creation of the world, everything that was going to be throughout the 7,000 years of creation and all of the different parts of the world that were to be settled, all existed in a place of potentiality, in a place of koach, within the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, within HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. At a certain point, again, it's difficult to talk about this because there's no time on that level. So what does it mean before that and after that? These are things that are beyond the human's ability to comprehend. But at a certain point, whatever that means, when it arose in the Master of the World's Ratzon, in that place of Keser, Leboram, to create the world, he took everything that was going to be, that was already folded up into that place of Keser, which is related to the concept of Magid Mirashis Achris, to be able to tell everything that was going to be, even before it happened, and that level of determinism, like the Arizal describes, that in Keser Elyon, in the realm of Atzilus, everything is foretold. He took it from that stage and that place, Mikoach el Apoal, and he ultimately brought it to actuality. And everything that was going to happen, everything within creation, ultimately we, from our perspective, still have Bechira, and psychological studies have shown that a person who thinks that there's determinism and that he has no free choice will probably live a far lower quality life. He will make the wrong choices and ultimately bring himself to ruin. So ultimately, even though everything is predetermined, if from our perspective we're not going to utilize a Bechira, it ain't going to work out the way that ultimately it's supposed to, a certain level. And ultimately everything that was going to be and everything that is was ultimately folded up within Koach Ein Sof, within the potential of the Infinite One, Baruch Hu, Baruch Shema. So it turns out like this. If this is what we're going to say, that ultimately everything that was going to be was already existent, in that place of potential before the world was created. In Cain, So he says, if this is so, then there's never God changing his mind. Because this was all pre-programmed. Not just that the tzaddik was going to come and daven, but that there was going to be a chole who would be healed through the tzaddik davening. Somehow this whole entire thing from the beginning was already brought in to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mind. It was already existing b'koach that the person is going to get sick, that tzaddik will come and daven, and he will be healed. So it seems that there was a change, but if the entire episode of the entire scenario was from beginning to end already existent within the Ein Sof, there's no shtanos, right? All of the change was already pre-programmed. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't change his mind. Ki kol zoi said everything that was going to be that this person would be sick. The atzadik is spadal, right? He seems to be referring to the actual proceeding of the events. The atzadik is spadal, and the tzaddik would come and daven from yetar b'tfilas and would be answered. So then the question obviously is, so why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu make this whole thing happen in the first place? What is there to be gained in anything happening? Because in a certain level, we cannot understand, it's very difficult, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu misabel l'tfilas and shel tzaddikim. Because the master of the world desires the tefillah of the tzaddikim. Even though he knows already that it's going to be, and he knows already in a certain level that it exists mikoach, there's something about the tzaddik, bipoah, in the realm of bechira, getting up and davening, that brings the master of the world a great pleasure. In a certain sense, it's like a person could anticipate pleasure in his mind, right? A person can know that by eating this burger, with a shook over here, eating a fat burger, he knows that he's going to have enjoyment, but ultimately when he actually sits and eats the burger, it's a different level, right? So it could be that a person has already in his knowledge that, the tzaddik's going to daven. You can know about pleasure, but until it actually actualizes in a certain sense, it's not exactly the same experience. But again, it's just a mashal gas. It's very difficult to understand, on what level we're talking. That the tzaddik is davening, he's binding himself to the master of the world. And this is the tainug, this is the pleasure of Hashem, that the tzaddik should arise and should bind himself to the master of the world. The Isa Svarim, and he says in this same vein, fascinating thing, it's brought in the Svarim HaKadoshim. Hatam sha'anu royim, this that we see a strange thing. Sometimes two people come, and immediately they meet each other for the first time, and they feel this bond, they feel a connection. They can't explain it. They don't know each other's names, and sometimes they can start talking, and it's like a half hour into the conversation. I'm like, oh, by the way, what's your name? Where do you live? Who cares? They connected on so deep a level. Where does that come from? Why do these two people have this connection? And they love each other very much immediately. They never met. They're meeting for the first time, and they feel this affinity toward one another. He says, this that they get together, and immediately they bind themselves to one another with dvekas and with avarabba. The reason is because somewhere on a higher spiritual plane, those neshamas had known each other in a spiritual sense. They had known each other before. And this, that now they're getting together and they feel such a closeness because they have that closeness. And on a deeper level, this closeness already existed in a state of koach. Now that they come to each other in the physical realm and shake hands and hug, so this old love is reawakened. Such a beautiful thing. If you ever bump into a person and you feel like there's a connection somewhere. There once was a connection that you have with this person, right? It even became a colloquial statement, like, maybe we're standing next to each other by our sina, It's the same sort of idea, is that on a spiritual level, the neshama is spiritual ultimately, and it exists on many different realms, and it has existed for a very, very long period of time. So who's to say what happened in a previous Gilgal? Who's to say what happened in a shorish on a higher level, on a higher realm? So that love, that old love is reawakened, that ultimately they had sitting next to each other in Gan Eden. So this is what Reb Chanina Mendoza is saying, such a deep thing, such a deep way of understanding Chazal. It's unbelievable. It doesn't take it at face value. There's such depth here. Im tfilasa shigura. Reb Chanina Mendoza is saying, when I'm davening for the mace, if the tefillah is shgura, which means if the tefillah is coming out in a beautiful way, in a fluent way, in a way of devekas, where it's a loymar, ha-tefillah hazo sha'ani mispala ata hishgura b'fida, the tefillah I'm davening now is fluent in my mouth, kamoy davar haragil shahurgal b'kfar. This is a lashon of something that's ragil, shgura, meaning it's something that's like shigra, like they say, it's habitual, meaning in a certain sense, Reb Chanina Mendoza says, like the two people who met each other for the first time and they know each other forever, it's like he could sense that this tefillah always existed. He could sense that this is the tefillah that existed b'koach, before the world was created. The tefillah is familiar to him, it's fluent to him on a soul level. He's able to say, must be, that the Master of the world pre-programmed me, pre-programmed this tefillah, and thus pre-programmed that this cholah should become well. This was all existent in the realm of koach, an amazing thing. And tefillah shigur, like shigra b'fi. Umaya hergel. Why would it be shigra? Why would it be shigura b'fi? That on a deeper level, before the world was created, Menashe existed, this chola existed, this tefillah existed, and it's all now only playing out on the level of, after the code, when a person actually goes onto the website, he sees all the elements, but on the level of code, it already existed for a very, very long period of time. And this tzaddik was somehow able, on a soul level, to tap in to this tefillah on the level of potentiality. Al derech, in the same way that we describe Shnei tzaddikim she'ohavim zeh machma shoy biyachad, two tzaddikim or two Jews, every Jew is a tzaddik on some level. This that we get together and we feel close and we feel an affinity. We were sitting next to each other in Gan Eden. So he says, must be shehi mikubeles, not that it will be mikubeles, but shehaya mikubeles. That it always was mikubal. That this whole thing was already pre-programmed. We got to play it out. We have bechira, and we have to make use of that choice to make our choices. But ultimately, that tzaddik is able to discern what was and what wasn't part of that original code, and is able to tell the future based on the way that the elements in between are proceeding. He's able to tell the outcome, because he's able to tell ultimately what this is going to bring to and how it was coded in the Koach Ein Sof. So it comes out that Chas v'Shalom, there's no ishtanos in the mind of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. He says, if I see that the tefillah is not sugar, must be that there's no hope for this cholah. This cholah was embedded again in the Koach Ein Sof not to make it, and so my tefillah is coming out shalosh shgur. I don't remember having davened this tefillah once before. Beautiful thing, very nostalgic thing. Right, so this is that a person is trying to change God's mind. It ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna happen. The tzaddik derives his ultimate life force from davening. Tefillah is the energy and the motor to the Jew's life. That when a Jew humbles himself and realizes that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives him everything, and that he has a relationship with him, and that he loves us, and he's with us, and he's together with us, and he's holding us, and he's supporting us, so that gives us energy, that gives us strength. Our whole day now is enveloped in that relationship and the humility that serves as the premise for tefillah. So shal yadahum is dabik ba'bori yizaleh, that tzaddik utilizes tefillah as a means of connection. Tefillah is melashon also tefillin. Naftuli lekim neftalti is a lashon of binding. Tefillah means to bind. Tefillin means to bind. Yisale, right? Canal. V'yadu ashal yedei shem hakadosh hayotze me'apasik es hashemayim ve'es haaretz nivra olam. Very deep thing without getting into the depth of it. That the Rosh Tevis of the words Es Hashemayim Ve'es Haaretz, which is right in the first pasuk, Bereshis Bar Elokim, originally, right in the beginning, God created Es Hashemayim Ve'es Haaretz. If you look at the Rosh Tevis, it's the letters Aleph, Hey, Vav, and Hey. This is a name Kadosh. This is a shame, right? It's not one of the shames that we're necessarily, all of us are familiar with, right? The primary shames that are associated with the Spheros and God's Midos, but these letters combine to form a very holy shame with which the whole world was created. V'hu Gematria Tov, and ultimately they are Gematria, right? The Aleph is 1, Hey is 5, Vav is 6, and Hey is 5. Together they are Gematria Tov, 17. Ve'ikar Tfilas HaTzadik Hi Ala Shechina HaKadosha. Ultimately, the Tzadik is davening for God's presence in the world to enable it to become revealed through the actions of man, through the creativity of man, through the beauty and the kindness and the tefillah and the davening and the learning of man. V'zeu, and this is pshat in the pasuk. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim. Yaakov Avinu lived in the land of Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim, what does it mean, Mitzrayim? If you look at the letters, it spells lashon Meitzar Yam, the constriction of the sea. Dahinu, what this means is Ayidei Shechi Mitzar Atzmai Al Galas Hashchina Nikra Yam, that the Shechina is called an ocean in the deeper Svarim. So Meitzar Yam means that the Shechina, God's presence in the world, is concealed. It's in Gullus, it's in exile. It's hidden within sin. It's hidden within mundanity. It's hidden within Litzanos. It's hidden within everything that's not deep and not beautiful and not plugged into the emes, to the truth, as we'll learn in the next piece with our final minutes. And that's why Yaakov Avinu had connection, had a life force, because the tefillah of a tzaddik is the life force. So Vayechi Yaakov, you know where Yaakov Avinu got his chiyas from, his energy from, his life from? The Eretz Mitzrayim, because he focused his whole life on this, that the Shechina, which is Yam, was in this place of Meitzar. Meitzar Yam, Shva Esrei Shana, 17 years. 17 years is a reference to that name Kadosh, with which the whole world was created, the purpose for which the whole world was created, which is Gematria Tov. Perish. Shekol Zayis Haya B'Koach Ein Sof B'Tchilas Habriya. That Yaakov Avinu's tefillah, which was Vayechi Yaakov Be'eretz Mitzrayim, which is a reference to his tefillah, was ultimately Shva Esrei Shana, was bound up in the beginning of creation in the realm of Koach, like Reb Chanina ben Dosa's tefillah was bound up in that name, which is Gematria 17, which is Rosh Hashanah's Es HaShemayim, the Es HaAretz. Vayechi Yaakov Be'eretz Mitzrayim was bound up with the very beginning. Unbelievable thing that he's expressing is that Vayechi Yaakov, which, like we described, that Tzaddik's ultimate life force, his ultimate energy comes from tefillah. Vayechi Yaakov was through his tefillah, which was Be'eretz Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is the yskstudios Meitzar Yam. Meitzar Yam means the constriction of the Shekhinah, and that's the tzaddik, his whole entire thing is davening to reveal godliness in the world, so that Vayechi, ultimately Yaakov's ultimate life force comes from the Eretz Mitzrayim, and that ultimately produces Shva Esrei Shana. Shva Esrei Shana is Gematria 17, which is this name Kadosh, Aleph, Hey, Vav, Hey, which is found in the earliest pasuk in the Torah, which is the very beginning of creation, telling us that the tzaddik and his tefillah and everything he's davening about was already existing in the very, very beginning, B'koach, in the beginning before the world was brought into actuality. Unbelievable piece. With our last 3 minutes, let's dive into the Sfas Emes, and let's try to get through this in a timely fashion. Be'ezras Hashem. Rashi says, Lama Parshas Ustuma. This Parsha is a stuma, meaning it doesn't have the 9-letter space, right, that ordinarily a new Parsha in the Sefer Torah has, which means a Parsha Psucha, where it's open, and it begins. This Parsha is Sasam, there's no space. Immediately the next Parsha begins. Says Rashi, why is this Parsha Sasam? Rashi gives 2 explanations. One, Pikesh, legalos, lahemes, akates, that Yaakov Avinu wanted to reveal to his children what the kates would be, which means when Mashiach would come and the Shekhinah was removed from him, and so therefore there was a level of closing, there was a level of constriction. But on another level, when Yaakov Avinu died, the Gemara says Yaakov Avinu lo meis, but ultimately on a certain level, when Yaakov Avinu left this existence and entered into another one, nistimu ineim b'livam shel Yisrael, the eyes and the hearts of Klal Yisrael were closed. When the tzaddik leaves, we have no guide. It's like a ship that has no captain. So ultimately we're left without a leader. And so our eyes and our hearts are closed up, and that's why this parsha is a parsha sasam. Ki be'emes, says the Helikas Vasemes Chos Yagon Aleinu. Ki be'emes leiv einayim shel ish Yisrael hula Hashem Yisbarach. He says the truth is that every single Jew, no matter what his level is, and no matter what his level of observance, and what his level of connection, and how he views himself, and how he views God, it makes no difference. Deep down inside, every single Jew's heart and eyes are to the Master of the world, are yearning. Our yearning. Hebrew is so beautiful. You know, there's in Hebrew, the word for yearning sometimes is klos einayim, which means like a yearning eyes, kilyon einayim. The heart and the eyes of a Jew are yearning for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're pining for him. We can't take our eyes off Hashem on some level of our existence and experience. V'rak asher nifter Yaakov Avinu alav shalom. But after Yaakov Avinu was nifter, and the tzaddik brings that out of us, and the tzaddik, or somebody who's religiously inspired, somebody who's able to give us hope, brings that out of us automatically. What's a real good friend, or what's a real leader? It's not that he teaches you something that lifts you up, but you stand next to him and all of a sudden you feel lifted up, right? Rav Kook says that tzaddikim are called mara de ratzon, the masters of desire, will. And I once heard one explanation is that, you can imagine a person who's standing, trying to make a mundane decision. A person wants to eat out one night, right? And he's trying to decide, should he have Chinese or should he have Carlos and Gabby's? So he's trying to make a decision. It's a very mundane decision, not going to affect anybody, not going to affect him spiritually, but he's trying to decide what he's in the mood of. And all of a sudden down the street, it could insert your blank of your favorite Rav or Rebbitzin or somebody who you respect walks by. In that moment, that decision fades away. I'm saying, like, all of a sudden, like, even the Baal Shem Tov comes, like, Rabbi Nachman's walking down the street, you're still thinking about your sesame chicken, or it's something else. It's something, the Mar Deratza, and all of a sudden, in that moment, everything becomes clear to you. Like, all I want is the Master of the world. Of course, I need some food also. You got to eat. But all I want is to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You see a tzaddik, the glamour and the grandeur of what it means, of a person who's connected on that level. The tzaddik can bring that out of us. Yaakov Avinu dies, nistam and nistar emes, and the truth becomes concealed in our eyes and our heart. That level of which we're yearning for the Master of the world all the time becomes closed. And after that, on a more chitzonius perspective, we have to guard our heart. We have to guard our eyes, not to go after physicality, not to go after that which is trying to detract and to pull us away from our ultimate mission of binding ourselves to the Master of the world. But that's only on an external level. But pnimius, our eyes are always looking at Hashem. But chitzonius, we have to close our physical eyes sometimes, and we have to turn away, and we have to redirect and recalibrate. Kamo shayi behester chitzonius, because that's the concealment of what it means to live in a physical world when we're not attached to tzaddikim, and we don't have those religious leaders filling our lives and giving us the inspiration and the guidance and representing to us what God would look like kiviyachal on earth, right? What that means to have a godly person. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is called Espnei Adon Hashem. He's the countenance of God on earth in a crazy way, right? We don't have that, and so then we have to put effort into closing our physical eyes to the outside. And he says ultimately this is the deepest exile of the inner essence. Because all that inner essence wants to do is to take over the person, and is to elevate every single aspect of the person, the way that he treats his wife, the way that she treats her husband, the way that they treat their children, and the way that a person is in a community, and the way that a person eats, and a person speaks, and a person sleeps. That Pneumius wants to filter throughout every single element, like the blood pumps from the heart and fills every cell of the body, to bring a person to a place of elevation, of consciousness, of living with the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's all the Pneumius wants, but ultimately it gets pushed down to this place where it's inside, it's burning, it's ever existent, but on a very, 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 very subtle level. And it's in Gullus, it's in exile in that place. It's not able to spread in the way that it desires. So what's the Eitzah? What's the advice? Shemati mi Adoni Avi Mar Zakeni Zal al pasuk Vayechi Yaakov be'Eretz Mitzrayim. He says this pasuk contains the secret that Yaakov lived in Eretz Mitzrayim. She'al yedei emes yichodim la'or achiyas gam b'chol hester u'meitzar. Yaakov Avinu ki yadua, without getting to the depth of it, Yaakov Avinu represents the trait of truth. Pasuk says, Titin emes liYaakov. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave emes to Yaakov. Emes is always the balance. Sometimes extremes could be positive in a certain sense, but Avram and Yitzchak are two extremes, chesed and gvura, but it's not the emes, it's not the truth, right? A person can be kind to everyone in their whole life, but it doesn't take in the truth that some people deserve kindness and some people don't deserve kindness. Yaakov Avinu is the balance. Rachamim, Mishpat, we spoke about this last night. Yaakov Avinu is the balance. Yaakov Avinu is the midah of emes, tiferes, the truth, the center point. Says the Heligas Vas Emes, a person wants to know how to live in Mitzrayim. A person wants to know how to dig deep beyond the Chitzonis, to tap into the Nekuda Pnimis, to that place of inner desire, of inner connection. Vayechi Yaakov be'Eretz Mitzrayim. By connecting to the midah of Yaakov Avinu, so you could live in Eretz Mitzrayim. Adarabah, Yaakov's best years were in Mitzrayim, were in Goshen. That by connecting oneself to the Nekudas HaEmes and everything is a very big concept. In the Sfas Emes, Rabbi Nachman discussed this in Torah Kuf Yud Beis and other places, that when a person will bind himself to the truth in everything and be able to look past the facade of this glittering, glorious physical world, which is ultimately just a shell, and he's able to look beyond it and to find the truth in everything, to connect himself to the truth. And a person is cognizant and conscious, even in the most fleshy and gashmiya situations, a person is able to realize there is emes here, there is truth here, there is God here, He exists, He's real. That the externality is not true. And even if we need to engage in it on some level, we have to live in this world to be normal human beings. We have to realize that it's only the tafel and not the ikr. That's not what I make the main thing of my life. My work is for the purpose of having a parnasa, but ultimately, what are you doing when you're not in work, right? It's a means. What's the end? What's the end of your life? Vacation's an end to your life? It's hard to say. It's hard to say that you came down to this world and you were outfitted with so many unbelievable functionalities for the purpose, like taking a smartphone and the goal is to put it into sleep mode, right? That's the purpose, right? The smart, it could do so many things. It can't be that it has the potential for so many apps and so many wonderful things. It should be in sleep mode the whole day. That's really what it is. Ultimately, there has to be something where I'm utilizing all of the chitzonius in my life, which may or may not be necessary, depending on the person's own spiritual and physical standing and situation. There's got to be something to elevate it. There's got to be some end. Rak Hester, the Chitzonis is just Hester. In accordance with the ratzon of a person to connect to the truth, to do the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to be bound to Him and to be conscious of Him and to have that relationship with Him, not to shake and quake in our boots in front of this king who's holding a sword over our head every second, but rather He's our Father and deeper, He's our best friend in the whole world, and He's walking with us and He understands us better than anyone. He was with us before we were even with us, before our consciousness was developed. He knows everything better, far better than we'll ever understand it. And He judges us favorably in that sense of knowing what we've been through. He is al tadin as chavercha acha degel mekomo, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the mekomo shel olam. Hashem is in the place of every single person, so only He could judge because He understands the pain. Kamokin is gadol emes, so then the truth will be revealed to this person. Va'adarabba b'chol makom sheyesh yoser hester. Ever listen to this line again? If we could tattoo something, we tattoo this line on my chest. Va'adarabba b'chol makom sheyesh yoser hester. He says, in the place where there's more hester, Shama nignas davar pnimi kanoda. Any place where there's more hester, where there's more pain and more anxiety and more struggle and more concealment, there's got to be something deep hidden there. There's got to be something to elevate. There's got to be some way of turning the whole thing around. That Dafka, Reb Tzaddik says, the thing that a person struggles with the most is the place that he has the potential to be much more pure in, more than any other person. Dafka in that place. A person has an anger problem. If he utilizes and works on it, he could channel that energy for ultimately holy purposes. And because he worked on it, mamish, the Indian of b'makom shebali tshuva omdim ein tzadikim gemurim, right? At least according to certain interpretation, the Torah Devar and others, that means that because the Baal Tshuva had to go through a process of refining. The tzaddik is just perfect, but the Baal Tshuva had to work on these things. So ultimately he stands on a higher level because he's far cleaner, because he's far more medactic, he's far more pure, he has more gedarim, he's worked on this area, he knows the sugya inside and out. And that's the line from the Sfas Emes, Va'adar Abba B'chol Makom Sheish Yoseh Hester, Shama Nignas Davar Pnimi, Kanoda, as is known. Chein Matzira B'mitzvahs Mila, and that's why we find in the mitzvah of Mila also, She'evra Mila Hu Kadosh, that ultimately one of the holiest chayfetz mitzvah in the world is the concept of a bris, right? This sign that male Jews are able to have on their body, baked in on a certain level, right? That they're bound to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this covenant. But and it's dafka there that a mila needs to be done to take off the arla, to take off something that's covering, to take off the hester, to take off the klipa, right? Through mila, priya, all of these things, to be able to remove that dafka, to uncover and to reveal something that's very, very holy. And that's how it is in everything. Any place in your life where you have a covenant with the Master of the world, if it's Shabbos, right? If it's bris, if it's liman Torah, if it's tefillah, any place that you have a contact point with the infinite, there's going to be an arla there. There's going to be a cover. And it's our obligation, ultimately, to tap into the ability through binding ourselves to the truth and to the awareness that God can be found in everything, that everything in life may be elevated, every situation can be turned around. When we are aware of this, we have that like scalpel, okay? The imagery might not be so great, but we have this ability to somehow cut away all of the thickness, all of the concealment, all of the hester, all of the darkness, and reveal dafka under that place the most unbelievable connection to the Master of the world through all of these points of contact. We should be zocha Eretz Hashem to take all of these ideas, and I said them very quickly, but to think about them and to all the time we say lo ikar limud ela hamaisa, to try to take something practical, to make this practical for us and for it to become a part of our personality and the way that we approach the world. I think that it could make our lives just a little bit more elevated, a little bit more beautiful. Good Shabbos. Thank you so much for coming.